Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Barbara Udit, and I'm the president of the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society, and we're so glad you're here tonight. We have a wonderful presentation tonight, and I know offhand, you know what it is, in May, because it's the end of the school year, and everybody's got a banquet or this or that or the other. So right off the bat, I knew of several people that wanted to come, and they were like, oh, you know. But thank you, Teresa Markham, because she not videos, I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah, I guess it's video.
Is that videos? Oh, it is. I think tape is the wrong word. Video.
I never know what to use either.
Anyway. Videography. So it will get on Facebook, and so people will get to see it.
And
eventually.
YouTube.
And YouTube, yes. And we're going to go ahead and open with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get started with our program. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here tonight together. We praise you for this beautiful day, and we praise you for this beautiful place that we get to live in. And we thank you for every single person that's here tonight, and the ones that are not here. Just bless them, protect them and their families, keep them all in your loving care, and help us to always know and do your will. We love you, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. And I'm going to ask Rusty Kahn if he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll stand, we'll join Rusty.
Everybody ready? Ready. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
All right, thank you so much. And now I'd like Jim Cox to come up and introduce our special guest for this evening.
Obviously, I've seen a lot of you eyeing all this beautiful pottery up here. Okay? It reminds me how little talent I have in the arts. But Brenda Stokes is with us, okay, and she's with Holly Hill Pottery. Holly Hill Pottery's been around for about 50 years. And they're keeping the tradition alive and educating people in putting students and everything else in pottery. So I'll turn this over to Brenda.
Cool, and I was gonna ask if we couldn't sort of just, maybe everybody could bring their chairs in.
Oh, but except don't block me.
In front of the pots.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because I would like to pass some of the pots around.
I don't know how I'm going to do this.
We'll get up there and then we'll find some spot for Teresa.
I'll go down the end. But then it's too close.
We're gonna go right here. We're gonna make it you.
Jim and Barbara. And I'm honored to be here tonight to tell you about how the Gulf Coast Railroad Society got started.
Got it?
Right here?
Yeah.
You do what you need to do.
So, I keep saying about 20 years ago is when this got started, but it has been a few more years now than that. So I would say maybe almost 30 years ago, a group of potters and instructors, professors from the Gulf Coast area wanted to participate in what all the potters were going to Asia and coming back, raving about these wood-fueled kilns. And we have wood-fueled kilns in the United States, but they're always, they were brought from Europe. So these Asian wood fire kilns fire quite a bit of art, and there wasn't one here until 1980. And this gentleman went over there, Peter Callis, studied in Japan, came home, built one of these in his yard, and stuck an ad in Ceramics Monthly magazine. If I build it, you will come. And he was talking about this famous potter named oh gosh, one of those senior moments now.
I know who you're talking about.
CRS.
I know,
Stuff.
he's deceased now, but a really famous guy who made clunky pots. And he had actually been to Pensacola State College before for a workshop. And he came. And he fired his pots in that kiln exclusively for probably 10 years, and during that time,
Was the kiln at Pensacola State?
oh no, it was at Peter Callis's up, off the East Coast in New England.
Oh.
And, I believe it's New England. God, what's the name of that crazy potter? Anyway, a lot of famous potters have been to Pensacola State back when my husband and I were attending. And a lot of them are in this, these are people who have donated, famous people who have donated pots to the society because we had no assets, and they said the way we could get credibility was by asking famous potters to donate work. And I'm like, well, why would they want to donate work to us? And he said, because you're going to build a facility. And we're like, okay, and yes, we do plan on building a facility if it's successful, but we wanted to build the first kiln at the university. That's where the, Stephen Hayworth was the instructor out there. Well, lo and behold, they thought we was crazy, and we're not, you're doing what? You know, because the Onagama kilns are actually about 30 feet long, and they burned Ventura effect, but there was plenty of room up there to put one. And so the instructor at Pensacola State thought, well, we can have one here, the old PJC, but there was really no room on that campus for a kiln that size. So everybody started looking at us because they knew we had the property out there in Holly. And my husband was a little reluctant at first, and he says, okay, we'll put it on the corner, that way if it's not successful, we can just pick it up and put it in the truck and they can take it away. And it has been extremely successful. We built the first kiln in 2004. We had a famous guy, Don Wrights, from the West Coast come out from Arizona, and he actually built one in St. Petersburg first. Because there's no kiln like this within a 12-hour radius, St. Petersburg built theirs first, and it's still like a 10-hour drive, and it's our sister kiln. And that girl's name that founded that project, her last name was Potts. And then we're Stokes. So we had this really good relationship going. And I said, well, since you're going to be the first one in the state of Florida, we're going to be the biggest. So we built our kiln a little bit larger than hers, so she could claim the first and we could claim the biggest. And both projects are extremely successful. Our husband and I, our family is donating a corner acre to the society to help them get started with the project. And we've got the infrastructure going into the Gulf Coast Kiln Walk Society's building, and in September, October, we'll be kicking off our public awareness campaign and try to secure some dollars to match state grants. And it's hard to get a grant without money. And we've gotten small amounts of monies through the years to do projects. But it's hard to do a project. Our projects are done either at the University of West Florida or Pensacola State College. And we ran clay conferences for almost 10 years. Every other year, there was, come on in, Henry. We won't make everybody look at you. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Henry's a very good surfer.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, and a board shaper too.
I am.
Yes, he's an artist.
Hey, you were here before, weren't you, Henry?
What's that? Oh, yes, ma'am.
What's your last name again?
Bernard, B-O-N-A-R.
Okay.
So anyway, we have a festival every year, the second Saturday of February. And it's always that second Saturday. It usually lasts from 9 to 2. There's lunch on the ground. We sell these little bowls that you get with your food. And it's a home-cooked meal from school teachers and the garden club, and it's gotten quite popular. But you get to help unload these kilns that have almost 800, 900 pieces. So people bring their garden gloves. If they don't have any, we go down to the dollar store, and we always have a bucket full there because some pieces are sharp when they come out. But the society is going to build a 40 by 62 story building there. So potters can let themselves in. It'll be like a latchkey facility, but then we'll also teach kids in the summer, like parent-child. Can't drop a child off, has to be parent-child. And then do workshops through the wintertime that snowbirds and the public can take workshops. And we're centering the first kiln around a sea turtle we'll have an actual sea turtle kiln to kind of get kids interested in, and then the sea turtle conservation is going to partner with us to do a lot of those workshops. They'll come out and speak about it. that's the plan for that. But in this magazine here, y'all are all welcome to take. We did this during COVID. People have been asking us. My husband and I and my son have done art shows for almost 50 years. And we started with Destined Seafood, I believe. And then the ladies invited us to Ocean Springs, which is a pottery town. If you've never been to the Peter Anderson Arts and Crafts Festival, it's the last of the Mohicans. It's the same weekend as the Great Gulf Coast, but the Great Gulf Coast starts on Friday. Peter Anderson doesn't start till Saturday, so a lot of people do both if they have time. But it takes actually 2 days to get through the Peter Anderson Festival. It's that big, and then there's 2 museums attached to it. But this is our group of potters here that founded the Gulf Coast Walk Society. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Peter and Xenia King, who operated architectural ceramics over on Stone House, they call it, on 17th, I believe it's on 17th or 12th Avenue. Well, they just recently relocated pretty much to Costa Rica. So the society purchased, right before they left, the society purchased a retrospective of both of their works. And then Larry Manning is another older potter who's retired from Bruton, and they bought a retrospective of his. And then when Bill Clover from Pensacola State College was ill, you know, he kept saying, you better hurry up. And so we bought a nice retrospective from William Clover. He taught at Pensacola State for 50 years.
What's a retrospective?
It's from the beginning of their work through till like their first work and their later work.
Oh.
So it's kind of a look through of the pottery.
Oh.
Like a historical, you know, this is where I started, this is my middle work, and then this is stuff I did later in life.
But it's like various pieces?
Yes.
That have.
Yes.
Of demonstrating.
Yes.
Miss Brenda, would you hold up the front of the book, the magazine, or,
That's the front of the book.
here we go.
We wanted to do this before COVID, so I got an estimate for the book.
Thank you.
And it was right at $5,000, and it was going to be taped, a taped and stitched, not hardbound, but a harder bound than this. So here comes COVID, so we actually got an estimate that was double that. And of course, I didn't have a budget for it. So the Tourist Development Society said sell ads. So that's what we did to make up for the other 5. But it still ended up being a stapled magazine. But we were proud to have it. It gives a history of Holly Hill pottery. Then there's a chapter on whatever page that is for the Gulf Coast Walk Society. But it kind of runs through our history as well. And, you know, you don't live forever. You can't take all your toys with you. So pottery's been so good to our family that we definitely want to give back to pottery. And before this surf museum came about, the upstairs of the building for this building will still be to house some surf memorabilia. Because from what I understand, y'all won't be able to house donations.
Well, no, hopefully we will. We're probably building a wing on it.
Good.
But we don't know yet.
Because we've got a couple of items that we would like to donate to a museum, but, you know, we're trying to keep them out of the dump. So there's some really historical items that were like the first cash register that went through. Yes, so we're keeping that in a safe place. But what intrigues potters to wood fire? Well, it would have to be the ash. It's all about the ash. So here's these trees that were cutting down in our area. We were fortunate enough in 2012, like the first fire was 2005, and Don Rice from Arizona actually came out and fired that first kiln, and with his assistant, and that was the beginning. And then every year after that, we tried to get a potter here, and then in 2010, we started the Gulf Coast Clay Conference, a biennial event at Pensacola State College, and we would always have a guest artist that would attract people from all over the Gulf Coast. And they brought a lot more awareness and techniques to fire these wood-fueled kilns. So in 2012, they were doing the highway through Holly, you know, the 87, they were widening, not widening, but doubling 87, and several historical oaks had to come out. So we negotiated with county commissioners to get the state to deliver them cut so that we could actually split them. We had a nice wood splitter. And they delivered them in huge trucks with tires this big, and they would just dump them in the yard, and then someone would come back and cut them so that we could get them in the wood splitter. And they didn't bring the trunks because they were too big, but my husband and another gentleman cut a section out of the trunk that had beautiful designs in the bark, that on the inside of the bark there, that we used for promotional purposes. And we made little tokens and passed them out, and that brought a lot of attention to the project too. And 2012 we made a little book that was Legacy of the Oak, and it was a legacy of the holly oaks. Because the one tree was over 300 years old.
Oh, man.
And right now we're using 300, we have a stockpile of 300-year-old oak that we'll have probably for the next 2 years. But then after they're fired, we save the ashes to make glazes so you can keep using that historical ash. And then there's a gentleman, Mr. Masayoshi Shimizu, who comes over from Japan, and he brings his historical mandarin and persimmon ash. So it's a pretty cool, it's really developed into a grassroots project, but as y'all will probably find out or already know, getting monies is hard. And right now, we're halfway through a grant that may get canceled by the state of, I mean, it wouldn't be the state of Florida's fault, but, you know, the money grab's going on, and they already took $10,000 of a grant that we had gotten to do a historical tour of the state of Florida, and it was already in progress. The ironic part is the state is showing the collection, and the state is canceling grants. So we're just crossing our fingers we don't get on the list, because we've already spent our money for that. You know, we've already had our exhibits, we've already had the students here, we've already had the festival, and it's just makes you nervous, you know, when things like that start going on. But I think it'll be corrected. It might take a few years, but as y'all know, grants are tight. You have to have money to get money. And so we'll get a little bit of money, and then we'll get a grant. You know, and then we'll get a little bit more money, and then we'll get a grant. But getting enough money to do a building, getting enough money to do a $400,000 building is tough. So it's gonna have to come in increments. So we're happy to get the infrastructure pretty much paid for, you know, the infrastructure, just to get a civil engineer and the architectural engineer is not the architect, and it's just a metal building, for crying out loud. You would think, okay, it's a metal building, how hard can it be? But it's extremely hard. Yeah, it's like, what? You know, we should have just went ahead and put up a metal building a long time ago on our personal property and then turn that over to them. That would have been a lot easier, and then we could grow into that. But it's too late. They know what we're doing. You have to have 2 bathrooms. They have to be handicap accessible.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, so, okay, we can do that. But I would like to tell you the ash is what attracts people to the kilns. So this kiln is 30 feet long, the Onagama is, and it's got like a 6-foot opening at the top. You can walk all the way back to the end of it, and that's where you start loading the pots. And as all these pots are loaded from the back to the front, the door is sealed up. The area about this big is where the wood goes in the front, and there's stoke holes on the side of the kiln where sticks are dropped in there to bring that up to temperature and to give better ash to the back of the kiln. But then when it really gets to raging, after about 3 days, the fire really gets hot and really gets to going. And it's been explained to me, when you stoke the kiln in the front, it's 30 feet down the kiln, another 15, and then sometimes that flame comes 10 feet out the chimney. So you've got a 60-foot continuous flame that goes. We have to call the fire department every year and tell them that we're doing the kiln, because when people come from the highway, it looks like a big house fire. And the little kiln, they don't call us much on that one, but the big one coming from the north looks like a raging house fire. When they stoke it, it only lasts for just, 30 seconds to a minute, and then it goes back down into the chimney. But at nighttime, people come bring their chairs and their trucks and sit on tailgates and watch, watch the spectacle, because it's quite a spectacle. But while that flame is running through there, if you imagine a river with a bunch of pebbles, the fire's going all through there, and it's touching each piece of pottery, except the ones that are totally protected, like this little jewel here. We can pass this around. I'll start with you, camera lady. And this is a copper. There's almost no glaze on this piece. There's a receptor glaze that's a chino that's real thin. These sit on wadding that sits on it because the flame goes under it also. And this is all ash. There's a little bitty line of glaze around the top. That's a receptor, and everything else is ash. The receptor glaze is also on the inside to seal it if people want to put water in it and whatnot. But usually the ash goes in there too.
So the ash is what hardens into making?
Yes, that oak tree, even if the oak tree is young, it's still sucking up minerals from the earth. So an older oak tree sucks up everything that we purchase, like Holly Hill Pottery purchases minerals that are in bags, and we mix up the glazes. That oak tree collects minerals in the not just the bark, but in the wood that we purchase. So when the wood is burning, it deposits the ash onto the pots. And when the kiln reaches close to 17, 18, 1900 degrees, when you put the wood in and it gets to around 1900 degrees, the wood kind of just explodes, and then that stuff goes onto everything. And they shut it off when it gets to, if I'm not mistaken, about 2400 degrees. 20, anywhere between, some spots are cold so it won't reach. Other spots are hotter than that. They'll melt the pots. But right now, all of the young potters, and older potters too, fight over the area where the crusty pots are. They've recently been fighting over where the ugly pots go. And that would be, like this little piece here, there's a beautiful side, like, what's their names? Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know which one was which, but Jekyll and Hyde, that's the pretty side, so whichever was what, or the yin and the yang. But
Yeah.
this pot here, the rough side is where the fire actually hit it. And then the pretty side was to the back, so, the flames hit that and then go around and out to the next pot. So
does it change the shape?
There's a turtle.
So what about the wobble?
Sometimes.
There's a turtle.
Sometimes it changes.
There's
the
a
shape.
turtle
Does
right
look like a
there.
turtle.
Like this is a pot that was in a protected area too, but his eyeball got a drip. The glaze also collects under the kiln shelves, so they'll drip sometimes. And the Japanese have made great out of it, saying that's good luck when it drips on your pot. Well, it dripped right on his eyeball, and I didn't think that was such good luck. But we got it, we got it off of there, and I just keep him for me because I like him. But you can see where he's set on 5 little
Is that supposed to
aluminum
be a
hydrate.
turtle?
It is a turtle.
Yeah.
Yes.
I swear that's a turtle right here.
But
Look at this.
there's almost no glaze on that pot.
Doesn't it look like a turtle?
Where's my glasses?
Colors.
Oh yeah, that's a turtle. Yeah, that's.
So the ash makes the different
Did y'all-
colors?
The chills, they just found a
Is it
turtle
the
in my
ash
house
that makes
today.
the color, or is it the minerals?
The cobalt can make, like, there's cobalt, this one has right around the rim here. So I like to put them in these grooves because they'll follow the grooves. But the cobalt migrates, like if there's a blue pot sitting in the middle of a bunch of other pots, that cobalt, the ash will migrate, like when the ash and fire hit it, it'll cause that to go to other pots. So you'll get blues and hues on other pots.
Question. Are the minerals coming from the wood in the tree? Like, the roots kind of accumulate, the roots pull it out of the
They do,
soil,
they do.
accumulates in the wood of the tree, then you put the wood in the
Yes.
kilns, and then that, in
Yes,
the
and
ash.
different woods give you different effects. Like, if the kilns, say it's really foggy, because it takes 5 days to fire the big one, And if it's really foggy, the wood will absorb the moisture, and it takes a lot longer to fire the kiln. So they've got a little stash of, what do you call that? Lighter knob. So they've got wood that is actually turned into turpentine, and they'll get that out and start throwing pine that has more resin in it to get it up to temperature, and that turns pots green. It'll give it a nice glassy green hue. Most potters don't like it. When the art potters come, they won't use it. They'll just take the oak and dry it out on the side of the kilns. But then some potters use pine and they like it. So it's, we try to compromise, make everybody happy.
Do you kind of know what colors you'll get based on the ash, or just completely random?
Yeah, you know pretty much what you're gonna get.
Something
Yes,
within some.
the smaller kiln, we have not just the largest kiln in the state of Florida, but we also have the only reconstructed, what they call southern altered groundhog. We've also got the only preserved kiln in the state of Florida that's actually fully functional. So that was fired for the festival, and then it was fired again just last week. Well, week before last, because they opened it last Saturday. Students from the University of West Florida, and then the students from Pensacola State, and then Fairhope students were here, not Tallahassee, but Panama City students were here, and it was a very successful firing, and it only takes 3 days. It's like a 3-day firing.
How long does it take to cool?
The little one just takes a week, but the big one takes 10 to 12 days, and sometimes 12 days it still won't be cool. It takes a long time.
So the whole final finish and the color, that's all dependent on the ash?
It kind of is, but we're using more and more colorants, not colorants, but glazes. There's a glaze that came from the colleges way back, we call opalescent, which is a shinier, this is a Japanese glaze. It's just dipped in a recycled glaze, but cobalt was put in, a blue cobalt was put in these little buildings so that they would show around the sea turtle, and just for highlights. But and the receptor glaze is put on, and that's just a real thin layer of basically, it's a Shino, it's an Asian developed glazes they call Shino.
And is that what makes the shiny, or is that another
It can make
coating?
it shiny, or it can be not shiny. This is
Oh, I love him.
this is an example of, this is mostly all wood ash. The only glaze is right at the top, but the longer the fire pounds on one side, the more buildup of the ash, and the closer to the front of the kiln, the more buildup of the ash.
This is outside or in a building?
The kiln, it's inside bricks.
So like
So the weather,
chimney
so
that
the
they
weather's
go
not gonna
around
affect
side
the
with.
rain?
Oh, it's
right?
under,
This
yeah, it's
looks-
under,
this
it's
is
under,
waves.
10.
It's under 10.
Both kilns are under 10,
Okay.
so they can fire them when it's raining. It's terrible when it rains, but it just slows down the process. Not the little kiln so much as the big kiln, because it dampens all the wood, and it slows down progress, because you have to dry out the wood before you put it in the kiln and fun stuff like that. This pot's really fun here, because it was side fired on seashells. So it's actually fired in the kiln this way, sitting on seashells. And I believe you can see how it was sandblasted with the ash. And I can't tell you where it was sitting, but I know that it got really hot. Because the heat kind of takes the color away. Yeah, that's an iron glass. So this was the underneath side, and you can see how pretty with the crystal growth and what they call a dragon's eye, where all of the ash came together. And then these are little crystals that form also. This was wadding that was there, so it wasn't able to get, it was a big piece of wadding that was with the seashell, so it wasn't able to get ash on it.
What is wadding?
A big piece of alumina hydrate clay that pops off. It's supposed to pop off.
Just to kind of
separate these pots in the kiln with some material or something?
They just sit on, like this one was sitting on a seashell, and then there's wadding under the seashell. And this one is a folk pottery, is a folk scene of a fisherman throwing his cast net. That's the Navarre Bridge with, you know, the bungalows and summer inns and Regency. But you can see where the fire actually hit this one, so it's hotter on that side. That's the cooler side. And we try to leave stuff natural. And this was the old butterfly dock that they're rebuilding right now.
Dragon's eye.
Henry probably knows where the butterfly dock is.
And this is the dragon's eye.
That's the dragon eye, they call it.
You're the one that does all the art on these, aren't you?
My whole family does.
Your whole family?
But my mother was an artist also, and she was a painter, and then she carved on pots too. And at one point, my dad was retired from the military, then he retired from teaching school, then he made exotic wooden toys out of exotic woods. And he went to the shows with us. He didn't have much patience for the public, so he didn't last too long. Questions and a lot of things you put up with, like I can buy this down at TGY,
Oh.
so why would I buy it here? And he didn't have much patience for that, being a, you know, in the Air Force and in the school teaching. But my mother, she did shows with us for almost 15 years. It wasn't fun. So there was like, and then Jason my son got his own booth at one period. He was doing a lot of, that guy Utaku, and he was combining fish printing with pottery.
Oh.
And so we had, 4 booths, we had 40 feet of booths there. Family booths, it was fun. So we always had to set her up first, and then, and then Jason would set up, and then we would set up next. But some of these pots are very extremely rich with, history. You know, that tree's life is on this pot. And this is another really, you can feel where the fire hit it. And this pot was probably protected like right around this area, so the flame only hit it here. There's probably a smaller pot down there and then 2 bigger pots on the side.
Do the pieces contract or expand any
I'm
during the
sure with the
process? I mean, do they come out the same way size-wise, or?
Oh, no, they
Like a
shrink a
pot?
lot.
Okay.
Pots shrink a lot from, like, in our personal kiln, we fire with gas, and in our personal kiln, you know, you look through the peephole and you can see the top of the pot, and then at the end of the firing, you can look through the peephole and the pot's gone, because it has shrunk about 14 to 19%, depending on the clay structure. So it shrinks quite a bit.
So these little indentations
Is
are
a hand.
from
No, that's for, yeah, it's a hand grip.
oh,
So your hand, that's
Oh,
your thumb,
wow.
your thumb goes there.
you know, that's.
So the artist kind of takes that into consideration, that if the design or something they're doing, that it'll, you know, it's not gonna be this, it's gonna be like that.
Yes, if somebody
Yeah, so it
wants
kind
a
of
pot,
contracts down
yes,
to
if
wherever.
somebody wants a pot that's 12 inches, then you have to make it, you know, about 14, 15 inches tall. So that when it shrinks, it'll be the size that they wanted. And, another important thing about wood fire that I learned, because I knew we were gonna get bombarded with, oh my gosh, they're burning wood, and that's not good for the environment. So when Chris Guston was here, this is a very famous gentleman that came 3 times to our firing, and he probably is the most famous potter in the United States, not the world, but in the United States. And right now he's having a show in New York, and he was just written up in another New York. He had a show here last year, a big retrospective, him and his wife did, and it took up the whole entire Lamar Switzer new building. And his pieces are like huge. And if you go online and look at that exhibit, you know, that's him building one here. But he told me that, and he sent me to an article I couldn't find in time here, but I'm gonna go back and find it, that there was an island off either Korea, Thailand, or somewhere, you know, they fire a lot of flower pots, and functional pottery, garden pottery. And so they always wood fired. And when the gas came about, they thought, oh, we can fire much more feasible and faster with gas, which you could. But over the years, the bad thing that happened with the gas was the crops started failing on the island. So they went back to firing with wood slowly at a time, and then over the years, the crops started coming back. And I can tell you what's released from our gas kiln is much more detrimental to the environment than what's released by the wood fire kiln, because it's no worse than the wood rotting, you know, the gases that are put off by the wood rotting, or when you burn it, it still puts off probably the same amount of pollution as if it was rotting. But the good thing about it is that the rotting wood is awesome for gardens. Well, so is the ash. You know, the ash is, we use some of the leftover ash in our garden, which is now going to be the pond. Pardon?
Like high in potassium.
It's, you know, you can't use a whole lot of it, but it's, not as good as mushroom compost, but it's very good in the garden. But it can burn up, you know, it can also burn up, lots of it can burn up, things we've learned, I've learned especially. But, oh, well, a little is good, a whole lot must be really good. It's not. But anyhow, that's, y'all got any questions?
Is the finish different, what's the finish difference between gas and using the wood burning?
Gas only takes about a 10 to 12 hour firing, and it's reliable. It's still like Christmas every time you unload it, but you can pretty much predict what your pots are going to look like. You can't always, because of the atmospheric conditions, whether or not the electricity went off, because if the electricity goes off, then you lose your reds. And if one burner goes out, on that side, your reds will be, they turn back to a real pretty antiquish looking white, and then the other side will be red. And the pots down the middle will be white on this side and red on this side, so that's kind of cool. But we like our reds, even though it's not such a loss if it happens, because it is an antique looking glaze. But all of the tin that makes the red color, it burns out. And the red glazes now are, the high fire, all of our glazes are non-toxic. We don't use any materials. In the beginning, when we were at the schools, long time ago, they used to use colorants that would make your glazes brighter. But then, of course, over the years, they found out that barium and things like that are not good for eating off of. So you know, nixed that. But they still kept them around for art. But then the students would get into them, so with all the restrictions coming around, they got rid of every non-toxic. Every material that's toxic is supposedly out of there. And we got rid of it because we didn't want to be exposed. And we buy chemicals from people who retire, they pass on, their family sells the things, and we'll purchase the materials. And a lot of times there'll be some of the old things in there, including uranium oxide. We got one time, and we were like, uranium, that doesn't sound good. And so we gave that over to the Gulf Breeze Health Department. I'm sure they disposed of it properly, hopefully. And then there was another material that I used for 2 years that we found out had killed a bunch of ladies at Rookwood, because they would lick their brushes and then paint to make the tip on it. And it had an umber chrome. It was a chrome type oxide that's lethal. Well, it's a cancer agent for bladder cancer.
Great.
So, but I never licked it or nothing, but I did have my hands in it sometimes, and of course we mixed that right away. So, because you can't help but get it on you. You can't help but get the glazes on you, and we try to be as careful as we can, but you know, people that play baseball are exposed to silicas, because that's what the red clay has, a lot of silica in it. So you're exposed everywhere. You try to do your best to keep out of it, but it's impossible, and now we're eating it, aren't we? I think we got plastic in our DNA now. Right here. We're part plastic. Our first insult with plastic was, this little surfing island, Eleuthera. It's got a world-class surf break there when the winds go all forward. And it's this beautiful little wave, and it's also beautiful to snorkel it too. And our first encounter on the beaches there was this deep, no doubt, in plastic. And they were coming from the cruise ships. It was horrid. We're like, really? So
I saw something.
it was eye-opening. It's like, gee, y'all need to get some help here. Get
They
this stuff
say
off
that
the
the Hawaiian Islands are a sieve, that one side of the Hawaiian island, 'cause it was on David Letterman, he was interviewing someone, and it just sieves it, and that whole side of the islands is all plastic. I think he said it was
I
Hawaiian
think when
Islands.
Japan had the tsunami,
Yes,
that,
and the wave, the
it went
current
out into the
goes.
ocean, a lot of the junk went out into the ocean, and then that supposedly formed miles and miles of, and it happened here too, when the hurricanes come, the same type of thing happens, and I heard the horror stories about all the cows that were out there. I don't know if y'all heard it or not, but somebody's probably pulling my leg, but they said that there was quite a few cows out in the ocean that were bloated and floating out there from
Wouldn't
the
doubt it.
hurricanes. Did anybody hear that? Are they just telling me that? So I'll repeat it?
Wouldn't doubt it.
Dunno. Okay, so, any more questions? Okay.
So do you sell the pottery?
Yes, we have a gallery behind the house, and the exhibit that was over at Pensacola State College, we now have that in the corner of our gallery. So if you wanna come in, you can do a tour of, the corner, and there's illustration, paintings illustrated, how the big kiln fires and how the little kiln looks like when it's firing, and a couple of them are, potters that were here in 2006, and then they're illustrations of potters anyway. And there's this little young Asian lady, she's actually a Japanese heritage who lived on not the big island, but Oahu, and she threw pots, then she did pinched pots that were taller than her, and there's a painting of her walking amongst her wood fire pots.
And the location of this is where?
In Holly. It'll be in this book.
Publication, okay.
And we sell at the gift shop at the Turtle Center.
Oh, you work at the Turtle Center?
We sell through it all
Put
the
my
time.
glasses on. Oh, yeah.
We sell through it all the time.
Yes, they love
I
those
see, we
mugs.
just got another shipment in the other day.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
We also have the mugs at Interlight as well.
You still working at Interlight?
Yes.
Nice, I just saw Leighton and his new bride.
Yeah.
Yes, they look like little kids.
The honeymoon.
And when we get our gift shop, we'll sell them in our gift shop, the Historical
Yes,
Society
and
gift
I look
shop.
forward to collaborating with you guys on the new surf shop. We have, we've been interviewing surfers over the years. And, of course, ENC had been interviewed 100 times, but we've got interviews. We're trying to get this gentleman, Julius Piccioni, and he's our new documentarian for Kiln Walk, but he's been interviewing surfers that aren't well known. And there's a gentleman in, Fort Walton who has made a career out of building surfboards his entire life. And nobody knows it. He's retired now, but, nobody,
Knew of it.
he's just, unknown. And another gentleman, Mark Rush, he interviewed him, and Tom Grove. Tom Grove is the oldest known surf, not oldest, because they do have pictures of GIs and stuff, but, Tom's 80, and then his friend, Scott Bush, was the first surf shop here. Yancey was actually on their team, and Tom will probably talk about that maybe, or already did. I hate to have missed the first one. It wasn't the first one. They did, a guy named Mike Cotton.
Yep.
Yes, did a little documentary that was really nice at the museum, and people came out to that. And at one time, somebody was gonna start a surf museum, and then I never heard anything else about it until Barbara contacted me through JB, that y'all were planning on collaborating, which is a great idea, because it'll be mutually beneficial, I think. And what a spot too, right across from the surf shop. We were looking at it today.
Yeah, tourists.
You can put a sign right in the corner facing the surf shop, and they can go, they're right there.
And Buck's surfing sport was right down where the mattress place is, in the Benson
Yes,
complex,
and he
that
actually
was
had
Bucks.
he actually had that, cash register.
Yeah.
But, did they? Okay.
Yes, and
Friend of
it
mine
came
worked
from
there.
Hudson Hardware. It was the one used over Hudson Hardware.
Okay,
And
okay.
then they donated it to Joe Buck when he was first starting.
Okay.
Is that Hudson with a D
With
or?
the T.
Is it related to Tom Hudson?
It's not related to him,
No.
I don't
Oh.
believe. It was
Is it a
Hudson,
D
the
or T?
Waters, Brian Waters,
Okay.
and his family ran Hudson.
Yeah.
And then their mother was a really good contemporary artist, kind of folksy contemporary, who passed away. But she did the Gulf Breeze Art Show, and she did pretty big, everything in her booth was original, I believe. Because we used to trade a lot, she'd like a pot and we'd trade paintings with her. She'd just go sit in Seville Square and paint people
Wow.
and sit around town and do really, really nice contemporary-ish, folksy sort of, scenes, mostly people. And then, Brian is a great artist himself, sailboat operator, and then there's Mike Bredesen, who did, Flat Island Fins, but the two of them made the first shortboards.
And was he the photographer too?
Michael
Mike, but those are the three that, in June,
are coming,
they're, yeah, it's Brian Waters,
Mike Bredesen,
yeah, and,
I don't know that I knew that.
Dave
person.
Skelton.
Dave
Dave
Skelton.
Skelton.
Yes, cause
He's
Dave
got it.
ran Joe
But
Bucks.
he's sure in Compton.
Yeah.
That's
He's
where
the
I know
theater
that
one
name
here.
from. Okay.
On the
Where's the
ninth.
theater room?
40
Yeah,
years.
you, go down the hall and
Is it
then
by the
you make
gym,
a-
you think?
By the other gym.
It kind of borders the
But you
shoreline.
can park out front.
You park out
Yeah.
front, you still come in the same way, but then you just walk down and then you go.
Walk down this other hall.
You have to make a couple of lefts.
You have to make a couple of lefts.
Yeah. And then it's-
Ain't that the highway?
Headed that way.
Basketball
It's actually on the side of the shoreline. It's on that side of the
Yeah,
shoreline.
it
Towards the
borders
old gym.
on the shoreline, yeah.
Isn't that
But
where
it
you
seats
vote?
150.
Good grief.
Well, we had 105.
Yeah, that's where you, I
in
think
this
that's where you
room.
vote.
So,
No,
Were you
that's-
here?
So
for that?
Dave-
Yeah, the Tom Hudson one.
I can tell
Yeah.
a story about Dave's place. I was in, I believe I might have still been in high school. I can't remember the year, but it was 71 or 72. And 73 maybe. But I was in there yakking and getting some surf wax or whatever, and this guy came in and said, "Can I put some posters, can I put some flyers in your window?" And Dave's like, "Yeah, whatever." And so he taped up these flyers, and when I was leaving, I looked at one of them and I poked my head back in the door and I said, "This is the Grand Exalted Ruler." I said that they are having a powwow over in Milton and it's whites only. It was the Grand Exalted, whoever he was with the KKK. I'm like, dang, I should've got that poster. Well, it was just mimeograph. It was like mimeograph on a thing there.
Was it Dr. Zog's sex wax?
There, he took it down. Yeah, tell him about that. That was funny. Yeah, KKK, Grand Exalted Ruler, hot dogs, hamburgers, whites only.
Wow.
It's a mess. That's a big mess. Well, thank you all for letting me come out.
Yeah. We're gonna have a 5-minute recess, just to leave, so we need to get her
I
packed
can
up.
sympathize with the macular degeneration. I can no longer see at night to drive and I have to get behind somebody to get home. And it's kinda scary.
I'm getting worse
Getting all
myself.
this out, 'cause we got a lot of men.
Yeah, we got Henry. These can stay, those were the heaviest. And these can stay also.
Thank you, Miss Brenda.
And this can stay.
Thanks, Brenda.
Yeah, certainly, and if y'all have comments, please read this article, it'll also be on our website.
Oh, the cookies.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
There's a guy in the shade towards there, there's a surf shop in the back.